So, hi and welcome to Designovate, a platform that aims to promote design thinking and innovation among young minds. Today, we have with us Mr. Kaif Faquih, who is a dynamic architect who is graduated from the University of Oklahoma in the US, which is one of the most reputable architecture institutions, and he's graduated with a top academic record. And he has a master's in interior designing and lighting from the institution. And after beginning his career in 1999, he's always believed in creativity and following well-channeled thought processes that can be customized to individual clients. And in doing so, he gives a voice to the creative vision of Fakir and Associates. So now Mr. Careful explain how design thinking has shaped his life and how it's helped him in both his professional career and his daily life. Over to you.
So, hi Rishi, great to speak to you here, and thanks for that introduction. And uh, it's a lovely topic that we're discussing today, and design thinking is central theme to architecture and interiors, and this is because in this field and profession, the creative process relies on design thinking. You know and there is a problem, there is a requirement that clients come to architects with, and the architect, so to speak, designs the solution for addressing their needs and problems and requirements. So in that sense, in architecture and interiors, design thinking is the starting point. And for me, to get to the central aspect of your question, so for me, it's been almost, you can say, um, uh, a daily process to be involved in design thinking, so much so that it becomes second nature to how I operate. And one of the important things that design thinking has taught me is to step back from the situation and look at things in a fresh and new light. And design thinking, I feel, also eliminates a lot of the biases that we develop as we grow older in life, and helps us to look at things with which one would say a very empirical perspective. So this is a very important feature of design thinking, which I feel that it gives you the power of perception. It gives you the power to see things in a different light, in a different perspective, and it allows you to step back and look at any solution, any situation, any experience also, with a fresh set of eyes. And many times it's happened that it is design thinking and the ability for to do so, which has solved the situation and come up with a resolution which is very beautiful, elegant, and at the same time simple. You know, Design thinking, I feel, also allows you to beautifully navigate through situations in life, and in a simplistic manner. It helps to avoid the complexities and complications that we all go through and face through. So to sum it up and to cap it, I think uh, we as we progress in life, we get more caught up in linear thinking, and sequential thinking, which generally is, or I would say, incremental thinking as well, which generally is solving immediate situations, immediate problems, immediate requirements. But we are not able to come out of the orbit of the problem or the requirement. And design thinking is actually a very powerful method of training your mind to extricate yourself from the problem, and then look at the situation from a distant, unbiased view. And that has sincerely helped me in my professional life as well as personal. So that's how it is.
Oh. So you talked about how design thinking kind of puts you in an omniscient perspective, like outside the box, and you're kind of looking at the issue as a whole. So how do our viewers kind of learn design thinking? Is there a set way to learn it, or is it more empirical?
Uh, yeah, I mean, certainly there are design thinking tools, and initially you have to kind of, I would say, practice brings about the intuition of design thinking. So one of the aspects I feel of design thinking is that you must be able to differentiate between the symptom and the cause, the root cause. And that I think is certainly important. Just to give you an example, that say when we design for buildings as architects, many times many architects and many professionals look at the building purely as a functional building which is required certain kinds of spaces and specialized rooms, specialized spaces. But is that really what we're doing? And design thinking actually is what helps you to tell you that actually what you're designing is human existence in that space, in that context. So if I am working, am I at home, am I with family, am I in a social atmosphere? So I mean the idea of going to a restaurant is that I have good food and I meet my friends and family and strangers as well, or I may meet business colleagues. So socialization is a very important feature of designing a restaurant. Now if we get caught up in the um, the immediate and which is designing the restaurant, its tables, chairs, and we don't look at this aspect of what is actually happening. It's a socialization exercise in that space. uh, you know uh, that kind of awareness comes through design thinking and only. So I think one of the important tools of design thinking is to step back from the problem rather than plunge straight in. And I'm going to use two words which I think are really important in my experience. And I see this becoming an issue in the current next 2-3 decades, time to come, which will hamper a lot of design thinking. And the words are focus, focusing. Let's call it focusing, and let's call it wandering. Okay, so focusing and wandering. And what I've noticed is that um, much of what we do, how we work these days, including with all the technology, is more about focusing. Mm. Uh, we bring it down to an individual problem, we sequence it out in steps, and that's not design thinking. Uh, Largely not design thinking. Design thinking needs the other word, which is wandering. So you need your mind to wander, and you need your mind to not actually sometimes not even think about a situation, and let something mull over in your mind. Let it brew, and then with a flash of inspiration, ideas come. So I feel a lot of the world is missing out on the wandering side of things, because that's counterintuitive and that's not rational. You know, you look at a problem and say, okay, I need to go from place A to place B. And this is my ticket, this is my flight, and that's how I'm going to do it. But design thinking says that asks you the question that why are you going there in the first place? Do you need to go there in the first place? So wandering is as important.
That makes a lot of sense. Uh, and
Yeah.
so, like, can you give me some examples, say, of the way in which wandering has helped you in your life, or architects in history, because architects are claimed to be like the first design thinkers.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I mean, I can give you two or three top of my head. Um, See, we all were living 100 years back in a very different format. The kind of buildings that were made, the kind of the lifestyles that people had were very different. It is at that time that architects said that, as automobiles, the locomotive engines, ships, all of these technologies started coming in around, say, the turn of the 20th century, early 1900s. People started saying, architects, that we need to live in a modern way, and we need to live like we are now, the kind of things we are using for transport and communications and all, and not be stuck to a 1,000-year-old format.
Okay.
So so that kind of stepping back and wondering, of reanalyzing how we actually should be living, is one example. Then another example I can give from, as I said, what I do a lot in projects is, uh, I step back from the functional needs of the project, and I look at the psychological needs of the project. um, uh, for example, if I'm designing an experience center for a project, I will say that, yes, I am designing this for a particular informative experience for clients to come here, but also I'm designing this for to put the clients in a certain frame of mind, a certain relaxed state of mind, where they can be amenable for certain decisions and conversations. So um, this is a very important example of, you have to allow yourself to wander, put yourself in another person's shoes, and then think from that perspective, and that experience, which requires a lot of psychological training. And this cannot be done by just focusing on the problem, making a program and saying that, I need to do A, B, C, D in that order. So that's another example of how you step back and you wonder.
Right. So, and so how do you think that our viewers could kind of involve this wanting in their day-to-day lives rather than, uh, like, because a lot of our viewers are younger.
I think, what viewers could do, and this is very practical advice, so it's very pragmatic. One of the quick things one can do is that each of us knows that we do certain things in our lives every day as a routine. Okay? I mean, it could be taking the dog for a walk. It could be, playing a game. It could be something as in, you have a conversation with a family member for 15 minutes at the breakfast table. So it could be anything. Um, what you could do is actually, rather than following that routine in a mundane way, you could actually say, how can I design this in and make it more interesting as an experience. you know so you bring in design thinking into your daily life by looking at your daily routines. Sometimes it's even, for me, for the matter of fact, traveling from home to office, you're 40 minutes in a car, you're gonna have to do it. Either you accept it, or actually you say that, no, let me step back, let me see how I can make these 40 minutes interesting, and refreshing. So you could design these small aspects of your daily life also.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so like kind of making everything more in your life more interesting and adding like a certain element of. So what is the actual difference between design and design thinking? Because I find that people are often confused by this.
Good question. It's a very good question. Because the difference is very subtle and nuanced. Uh, and I can give you a practical answer that the design is the outcome of the design thinking, but it's not only that much. It's not that design is simply the outcome of design thinking. I think design thinking is a broader umbrella, and it involves a much broader, uh, I would say, bandwidth of the human mind, rather than design itself. And as I said, design thinking applies itself in the direction of innovation. Design thinking applies itself in the direction of an artistic dance. Design thinking also involves itself in something which is highly specialized, and requires a very fine sense of accuracy, say, as genetics. So the design thinking is a very broad brushstroke, which covers a lot of, I would say, state of minds. And I'm always going to come back to this phrase in design thinking, that design thinking eventually is about change of state of minds. And this is what I've realized a lot. And the design itself is, once you're in that state of mind, once you've caught that river, so to speak, that stream, then what comes out of that stream is your design process. That way.
Right.
So a pharmacologist who's researching on a medicine may have a very different need of nuanced design thinking than somebody like me, who is looking more at aesthetics and way of life, and people using their homes and offices and buildings.
And so for someone like yourself who is always looking to kind of integrate the aesthetic aspect of it in and
Right.
the creative aspect, how do you paint a picture of the persona of your, or like what are the methods that you use to kind of paint a picture of your client or of any group of people?
What I do is that I have a very interesting, playful method, which I use, also to make the journey exciting and fun. So what I do is that I look at the project, I understand the project, and then I actually ignore the project. You know, I don't put myself in the project. I almost like abandon the project, because a lot of design thinking actually happens without effort and will. But it's very important, of course, in the initial stages, to absorb the project and to let it go to your subconscious level.
Right.
And then once you release yourself from it, as I said to you earlier, the wandering phase starts. No, and then I would say pretty much it's a waiting game. It's like saying that you can't voluntarily create a beautiful tune or beautiful music. It has to come to you. uh, so same thing for me. The design, once it's in my subconscious, the project, the design comes to me, and then, as I said, then I catch the essence of the project, and
Right.
then the development journey starts. So this is how it is, and it's very exciting and fun, because it's so unexpected that when you'll actually, the flash will come for the project.
Yeah, it really seems that way. And I think, like as you said earlier, this is probably like the best way to change people from that focusing channel to the wandering channel. In fact, like
Right.
so, and so I want to ask about this year in particular. It's so different because for architects,
Yeah.
like everyone is moving from like being like social and all of that to more cramped, to more cramped environment. So how are you kind of dealing with that as an architect, and what kind of change in ideology is the entire field of architecture making?
I think this year, being unusual, has also characteristics which were almost in the offing since almost, I would say, a decade or two. It is almost like saying that there were signs and now there's a storm, but there were signs of the storm also before. And what I'm trying to say here is that um, uh, a lot of the earlier architecture was designed around what has been rightly described by several architects as the industrial age mindset, which is which is, so to speak, work, play, and rest. You kind of divided your entire life into work, play, and rest. So, just to give you an example, in a 24-hour day, you would work for 8, 9 hours, you would rest for 8, 9 hours, and about 8, 9 hours is for recreation and family. So, that's the kind of model that came from 100 years. With so much change and with all of this, even with our current pandemic situation, this model has been shaken at its foundation. you know. So even for architects, we are actually understanding the new modes of life, new modes of experiences and living, and those buildings, those architecture, those spaces which now will emerge will be catering to a very different mode. And uh, I would call it in this fashion that we were, because we were subconsciously driven by industrial society, we were doing, as I said, a sequential, compartmentalized mode of life. You know, okay, I sleep, then I go to work at 9 a.m., I come back, I spend time with the family, and I go to sleep again, or I go out, whatever. But now all that is merging. So, from a sequential way of living, we are coming into a networked way of living.
Right.
So, as you rightly know that now everything is like a web. You may be at home, but you may be working. You may be at work, but you may be also engaged with a conversation at home. And you may be chilling, but it may also happen that. So it's we are all trying to get used to how to feel good about a networked existence rather than a compartmentalized existence. And that's what COVID has also done. It's kind of broken the patterns of life, the habits of life, and now we have to recalibrate our lives into different patterns and different habits. But humans are great, and humans are very resilient, and humans will find the way.
Right. And do you think the aspect of having more personal space, or like a more personal touch, because as you said, work, play, and rest are all in the same environment now, at least for this year, and maybe some of these aspects will be integrated in the coming years as well. What do you think the need for personal space has become, or how do you turn to like aim to challenge that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's going to be the challenge of the network, because a network is not hierarchical. It is pretty flat, you know. So in a sense, it is very democratic, which is great. But what you lose out eventually is as you said, the aspect of what I would call as isolation. And this is very important in design thinking. Many people feel that design thinking is all about teamwork, collaboration, and I am all for it and I agree with it. But there is a small component of design thinking which is, I would say, is about isolation. Where you have to be able to not be part of a team, not be part of a network, and actually in your own self. And and that's why meditation and things like this also is very important for design thinking, where you feel you're within, and then the thought process changes. So in this network society, we will need to find our ways of creating those isolations if we wish to profess design thinking in our lives.
Right. And it seems like architecture is a great way to do that, because from our very homes, if we start finding this sense of isolation, and it could architecture could actually lead to a lot of roots in other fields as well, and integrate design thinking in them as well, subtly.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, architecture is actually, in a way, originally it was called the mother of all arts, because it combined all kinds of arts: sculpture, painting, crafts, the ornamentation, and it kind of brought everything together. And that's why it was called. Not necessarily so. Now I think even cinema does that very well, to depict human life, and other art forms as well. But I certainly feel that architecture is so important, because eventually your environment and the way, in the context in which you live and exist, has a great influence on how you think. You know? Architecture is influenced by people's psychologies, and then it also influences people's psychologies. So I think that's will be really important for architects now onwards to, you know, create an architecture for a networked society.
Right. And do you do you have any advice for any youngsters looking to form a career in design thinking, or if there is such a thing in your eyes?
I would put it this way, that whichever career that our able youngsters choose, please incorporate design thinking in that career. You know what I'm saying. It's such a broad subject, and it's so useful. Whether you're designing a machine, whether you're designing a pill, whether you're designing a house, or a piece of fabric, or a dance form, or are you designing something which is like a set, a movie set, so design thinking plays role. And I think even design thinking plays a lot of role in human interaction. So I feel that you could even design an interaction, and make life interesting. People do a lot of these things, but I think design thinking actually should be like almost like a pillar with every aspect of your profession, for youngsters specifically. And I think youngsters more so. The reason why I'm saying this is that uh, the competitive advantages of various aspects of an industry are fast becoming flat across the world.
Right.
A country had an advantage of technology, someone had an advantage of materials and resources, then another country had an advantage of cheap labor. Now all of these are leveling off in the world, hopefully in the next 30, 40 years. So what's the differentiating factor? It's design thinking. you
Right.
know so how you design your product, or how you design your so to say competitiveness, it differentiates you from all other aspects. Everybody has the same advantages. So design thinking also brings you a lot of competence rather than competitiveness. I would say competence in society.
Oh, okay. So basically, like what you're saying is that in a world that's where technology and all these skill sets are kind of being democratized, it's design thinking
Right.
and specific creative and innovative aspects that will kind of
Absolutely.
help people stand out. Sorry. Uh,
Right. Absolutely.
so is there anything else you'd like to say at the end of the?
No, I just like great talking to you, Rishi. Just to kind of, I said, give a uh, final parting comment would be that I think for all youngsters who are setting off on their careers in life, I think design thinking is your tool, which is essential now. Uh, it no longer suffices to just do what the other person is doing. And I also feel that uh, design thinking wires your brain into mixing and merging. It's to the best of both sides of your brain. So
Right.
your analytical, cognitive skills merge with your perceptive, intuitive, emotional side of your mind. So design thinking is an area which merges both of this. And it's a great experience to live life like that.
Oh, yeah, it really is. And I hope to take this forward a lot. So thank you so much for your time and for shedding light on this.
Most welcome.
And I'm
Yeah.
sure our entire audience will benefit a lot from this. Thank you so much.
I hope so. I hope so. All right. Okay. See you. Bye. Bye, Rishi.
Bye.